Hey, Richard Myers here. Hey, in my last video, I introduced or talked about, I guess I might say, the idea of practicing your faith commercially, intending to be a little bit argumentative, maybe to catch your attention. And I introduced Conley Owens and his book, The Dorean Principle. It's E-A-N, not E-O-N. I misspelled it. But his book, The Dorean Principle, lays out a very thorough and complete exegesis detailing how Paul received money. And in it, he develops a biblical principle that really supports my idea that it's not good in ministry to have a financial subtext. And the way I described a financial subtext is this way. When you're receiving your income for full-time ministry from the people that you're ministering to, in other words, it's kind of like a fee for service, then you have a financial subtext. Now, for the most part, it works out. But on a number of occasions and specific incidents, biblical principles are thwarted. And on many occasions, I know of some personally, people's lives are badly injured spiritually because of this financial subtext. So it's been a problem for me since the day I entered seminary. I've told this story and I won't retell it, but there was some of my classmates were pragmatically developing their ministry strategy, how they were going to have a career in ministry. And the whole idea of a career in ministry was foreign to me. I had a career, I was an engineer, I had professional standing, but ministry was giving your life. And so this was a problem for me, I'll admit it. And so as we formed the church and as I became the pastor of the church, I realized pretty soon that I was practicing my faith commercially. And so this has been a problem, particularly since I know of certain instances where people's lives were deeply hurt because of this. Now, so this is something that you won't understand unless you've been a pastor paid by a church. And so I apologize for kind of giving you something that I don't think you're going to understand. But let me continue, and I'm going to come around to how your place in this is very important. And so the ideal way is that you would receive ministry, and this is from the Dorean Principle. You would receive ministry support from co-laborers. And so the question is, how would you do this? Well, in the missionary context, a missionary goes out and raises support. That support comes into a tax-exempt organization who then employs you as their employer, and they then direct you to this or that area of service. In other words, the mission agency is the government-approved entity that directs your support, excuse me, and directs your efforts. And they're listed as a 501c tax-exempt organization. Now let me just speak for a moment about the 501c3 designation as a to enable an organization, a corporation if you will, to give out tax-deductible receipts. This has a long-standing history in the IRS code, and what it gives, in my opinion, and you can talk to attorneys. I've done a lot of work in this area, a lot of work. You can talk to attorneys. This gives basically the government, through the Internal Revenue Service, control over your organization. And many pastors are violating the rules and subjecting themselves to the possibility that the IRS might step in and discipline your organization. Especially during this recent pandemic, I know of a number of pastors, and I've listened to them on YouTube. They're specifically violating the provisions of their tax-exempt status. Now, if the IRS came in and said you violated the provisions, you're on suspension, or we're taking away your tax-exempt status, the mortgage that the bank may hold over properties might be foreclosed upon, because part of the condition of that mortgage is that the organization be tax exempt. And so this can create all kinds of lines of control and can do real damage if the government decides to, for whatever reason, to attack. Now, I'm not saying that the government is going to attack. I'm just saying if they decide to, they can do it legally, and the pastor has violated the rules. By the way, I think this rule came into effect. I didn't go into the Google and search this recently, but in my memory bank, this was implemented by Lyndon Johnson in Texas. And Lyndon Johnson is a famous reprobate, and the Southern Baptist churches in Texas were against him. And so to prevent them from speaking against him, he was in the Senate, or in the House, I think it was the Senate, and he implemented a rule in the 501c3 status that the pastor could not engage in political activity, i.e., mentioning from their platform a specific candidate. What this did, it prevented the churches from opposing him for the election there in Texas. And so you see, this control element is real. I'm not making this up. It's a real hazard. Now, so the question is, how do we form co-laboring partnerships? Now, about in 2012, I came up with the idea of a direct gifting ministry partnership program. Direct gifting ministry partnership program. Now, this was based off the IRS code. In the IRS provisions and in the code, there is provision for gifting. Now, the idea, of course, part of it, not all of it, but part of it was that you could have grandparents giving to grandchildren. This is called intergenerational transfer of wealth. And what they allowed was, normally the gifting is subject to tax. So the grandparents would normally have to pay tax on their gifts to their grandchildren. But they put in an exemption, and this year I believe that exemption is $15,000. So if you give $15,000 or less, $30,000 for a marital community, that gifting is, you don't file a return, it's not recorded, the IRS doesn't care, basically. The person receiving the gift, now interestingly enough, they don't have to be related to you, it could be virtually anyone. And you could give to 100 people up to $15,000 each, or $30,000 for the marital community. So if you add 100 people you were supporting, you could give, what does that come out to be? $3 million, $30,000 per individual. So you see, it's per individual per year, $15,000 or $30,000 for the marital community. Now, the person receiving the gift does not have to, isn't income, and the person doesn't have to claim it as an income. It's a pure gift. It's a direct gift, as I've phrased it. And that money is totally, you can use it for anything you want as the recipient. And so this direct gifting ministry partnership program is built around that IRS provision. Now, the way this works is that the person who's going to say, I feel called, I feel led, I desire to operate, to practice, to express my ministry in a full-time setting. Those of you who are in seminary or Bible school, when you graduate, normally it's presumed, in many respects, that you're going to enter into a full-time ministry of some kind. Now, the question is, how is that ministry going to be supported? And so what I'm saying, that instead of receiving a salary, you would develop a support team. Now, this support team, for example, when I was in seminary, I had a list of 100 people that I ministered to on a regular basis through a letter. And so out of that list, I don't know how many would have supported me. But this is the idea. You raise support through the people who know you and who are familiar with the potential that you have in ministry and in the effect in people's lives. And so the support then comes, the person just deposits money right directly in to a bank account set aside for that purpose. And then that money, you're free to use that money for living expenses, for ministry expenses, however possible. This is the direct gifting ministry partnership. Now, I want to use an example. In some of the instances that I'm aware of, the wife becomes the direct gifting partner. In other words, one fellow that I know of, he ministered for years. I don't know if it was 25 or 30 years, I'm not sure of the time frame, in a local rural church. And his wife was a professional, and she made enough money to support the two of them, and they made an agreement that he would be a pastor and that she would support him. So she was his one direct gifting ministry partner. And it was on behalf of that pair of people that he was ministering in that local church. So, and that was important. So he was giving his life to them, and the resources were coming from his wife. So that's a little example of how this ministry partnership works. Now, some of us might have 100 supporters, some might have 3, so on and so forth. So that's how the system would work. Now, so what I'm proposing is that we develop a platform on the internet. There is currently a platform on the internet called Patreon. And Patreon was started in 2013 by a fellow who was a performer, a music guy. And in music, if you're professional in the music industry, it's much like the ministry. You don't know if you're going to have income or not. But anyway, this platform has been going since 2013, and now there's hundreds of millions of dollars. Let me say it again: hundreds of millions of dollars being funneled through this platform. And these are people who, let's say that you have an internet personality of one kind or another, a musician, artist, and you want to be a patron, you want to be a supporter of them. So you become a member on Patreon, and they give you, or they provide for you, as your membership might describe, benefits that other people wouldn't have. And so the income they receive through Patreon is taxable as income, and Patreon takes a 10 or 12% commission. But now, if we made a direct gifting ministry partnership platform, there wouldn't be any, there would be very, very small fees taken just to cover expenses, and the income received would be wouldn't be income, it would be a gift, a pure gift. And so by having this platform, you could explain to the potential partners the tax ramifications. Now you're giving up your tax deductibility of the gift. Let's say that right up front. You will not receive a tax deduction. But if you're giving in order to receive a tax deduction, there perhaps are other problems that we need to discuss on a private basis. And tax exemption is less important now than it's ever been. And so the tax exempt status, if that's important, then you can click off this video. But if you want to support somebody because you know them and you know their effectiveness and you appreciate their ministry, then this direct gifting ministry partnership platform would enable you to give directly to this individual. Now, what I'd suggest now, that's the donor side of this, or the gifting side of this. On the recipient side of this, let's say that you're in seminary or Bible school at this present time, and you say, I've got a couple years left on my program. Now is the time to start, because it can take a year or even 2 years or longer to develop a comprehensive support team. Now, the first thing you need to do then, and this would be the requirements in the platform, you need to have an advocate, and I'll just use that word, an advocate. It's somebody who can brag on you, can really explain how great you are, because God says the first requisite of effective ministry is humility, which means that it's difficult for you to go out there and say, how good you are. But there's another reason for the advocate. The advocate is personally and daily almost contact with you, or regular contact now that we have the internet, and you would be in regular contact with your supporters. But this advocate would be kind of a go-between, and if he saw something in your life that suggested something was awry and there might be abuses or misuse of these funds, the advocate is there, or advocates. There might be more than one, there might be 2 or 3 or 4. The advocates would be able to just step in, and they provide a function of control abuses wouldn't take place. So the requirement is that you have the advocate, and I believe to raise support, an advocate is a very important individual. So that's your first challenge, is to find that advocate, and then you and the advocate would go together to sign up direct gifting ministry partners. Now you would want to explain to those partners, and the website would help do that, that you were expecting and hoping that you would be partners for life, and that's the goal, because this is a really an important relationship. It's more important than just finances, because these people would be praying for you, for your safety, for the effectiveness of your ministry, and so forth. And so this is the Direct Gifting Ministry Partnership Program, and this eliminates the financial subtext. Now, let me just see, I've got some statistics here. I can just bring them from memory. In the United States of America, in churches that file tax returns, and these statistics are developed in different ways, of 12,000 churches, the average attendance was 67 people. And they've done the study, and it takes 130 people to support a full-time pastor. So that means that by far most of the churches across our country are pastored by people who are either inadequately paid and being supported by previously accumulated wealth, a family member like a spouse, or they have to get a second job or a third job. And this, to me, is just not the way the church should function. I tried to teach. I can tell you, part-time is just not going to work. I'm sorry. The quality of teaching is diminished, and the effectiveness of your exegesis and of your presentation, of your writing and publishing, is diminished severely for those who are not able to participate in a full-time basis. It would be better to withdraw altogether and just wait for the Lord's support to materialize. And so this would allow for full-time ministry in these rural areas around the country where the churches would be small, and as I've noted in previous videos, would be able to function on a more biblical basis because of the small nature of the gatherings. And you could be discipling. It gives great freedom to pursue ministry, and you can deal with the carnality that might be there in the churches on the part of certain givers who are wealthy and who are A-type personalities and are prone to cause problems. If you're dependent upon those gifts, then those problems are really intractable. And so this is the Direct Gifting Ministry Partnership Program would bring the kind of freedom that to minister, to give your life, to give your ministry away without concern for the financial needs that you and your family have. Many of these pastors are young people with large families, and it's just difficult to imagine how they, I was there, so I identify with them. And so anyway, pray with me that I would be able to see this platform come to fruition, that we could see young Bible school graduates and seminary graduates graduating with full support from a direct gifting ministry partnership group, and that person would go out and be able to ministry much more effectively. Now, can it happen? Yes, it can. There is lots of money sloshing around out there. People have money, and it's more blessed to give than to receive. People want to give, and it enables them to be partners in a ministry that they personally couldn't pursue. Now, I'm going to ask you in the comment section below, if you're in Bible school or seminary, would you consider developing, and do you think you could develop a direct gifting ministry partnership? And if you don't, just tell me so. I'd like to hear. I want to hear your opinion. It means a lot to me. And if you're listening to this video, would you consider, I'm not saying would you consider giving to me or anyone else like that, would you consider becoming a direct gifting ministry partner? You're going to give up the tax deductibility of your gift, and you're making something like a long-term commitment to partnership with this person who's going out to ministry. And I see that. I really enjoy I want to direct all of my giving now that I have to direct individuals rather than to companies, corporations. When you give to a mission agency or to a church, many times 10 to 20% of that gift just goes to friction, to overhead, and in some respects you could say that it's wasted insofar as ministry is concerned. I admit that I'm on the edge here. This is something that I don't think has been proposed before, but I think it's legal. I know it's legal. There's no question about it. I know that if it were implemented, a ministry would be much more effective to change people's lives, to stop people from sinning. Hey, give me your feedback in the comment section below. Click, because I read the comments, and I don't always respond to them, but I do read them, and I really enjoy the fact that I realize you've seen the video and that you've gotten something from it. Hey, God bless you, and we'll look forward to more videos ahead. Thank you.